Melati, and I'll be your moderator for tonight's session. I'm tuning in from Bali, Indonesia, and I'm very excited for the session From Youth to Youth, Generation Y and Z's Agenda for a Better World. Before we kick it off in a discussion with some really incredible speakers for you tonight, we are going to be listening in on a pre-recorded video from Jayathma Wickramanayake, UN Secretary General Envoy on Youth. So without further ado, let's bring in the video to kick us off tonight.
Greetings everyone, my name is Jayathma Wickramanayake and I am the United Nations Secretary General's Envoy on Youth. I would like to start by thanking the foreign policy community of Indonesia and Global Citizen for inviting me to be a part of the Global Town Hall and to talk to you all today about the importance of young people's political participation. Our world is facing multifaceted, multidimensional crises. From the socioeconomic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and the climate emergency to armed conflicts in and between countries, gender inequalities and structural racism, only to name a few, young people are playing a vital role in mobilizing and taking action for social change at both grassroots and global levels. Young people, the so-called generations Y and Z, care deeply about the world that they live in, with clear political stands and demands for accountability on the issues that affect them. They show their engagement in various ways, protesting on the streets, formally engaging in intergovernmental processes such as the upcoming COP27 or the G20. There are some good practices of institutional modalities for young people to influence global decision-making and policy-making spaces and to have a seat at the table. Young people's engagement is one good example through UNGO, the official youth constituency of UNFCCC. During climate negotiations like COP, UNGO provides a platform for young people to share their views and participate meaningfully in the climate policy processes at the international level. However, while this is a step in the right direction, younger generations are still largely absent from decision making, despite the fact that they are the ones that are mostly impacted by the current political decisions or lack thereof. According to data from the Interparliamentary Union, although more than half of the world's population is under 30 years old, only 2.6% of the members of parliament are under the age of 30, and less than 1% of these young MPs are women. Now, you may ask yourself, why don't more young people participate in formal politics? One part of the answer to this question is that young people who want to take part face multiple cultural, structural, financial, and legislative barriers in exercising their political rights. Another part of the answer is that many feel a clear sense of disappointment and mistrust towards political institutions, as highlighted by the United Nations Secretary General's recent report on Our Common Agenda. Many young people do not feel their actions are recognized or their priorities reflected, but instead are turning their backs to the establishment. We need political spaces and systems that actively shake up the traditional norms and modernize its institutions to channel youth political engagement to places where decisions actually are made. The report on Our Common Agenda emphasizes the need for meaningful, diverse, and effective youth engagement and participation in formal politics. I am therefore proud to say that my office, in collaboration with The Body Shop, has launched a global Be Seen, Be Heard campaign, which aims at amplifying the voices of young people and actively promoting their participation in political life in more than 75 countries. Some of the key objectives of the campaign are to lower the voting age, align the eligibility age to run for political office with voting age, or to increase youth representation in formal governance structures such as through youth councils. Young people cannot be left at the margins of formal political spaces. Their meaningful participation and representation are vital to strengthen our democracies and to promote a sustainable planet for all. This is not only a matter of youth representation in politics, it is a cross-sectoral and human rights issue. Young people in all their diversity have the right to participate. Let me end by highlighting few key findings from the Be Seen, Be Heard Global Youth Survey found that shaped this campaign and that I hope can serve as a basis in this East-West, North-South debate. The first fact is that 76% of those under 30 years old think politicians don't listen to young people. Secondly, 8 out of 10 people think that current political systems need drastic reforms to be fit for the future. 69% of people think that if younger people had more opportunities to have a say in policy development, our political systems would be better. In other words, if we strive for sustainable peace and development in a divided world, as is the theme of this year's Global Town Hall, political spaces and political systems need to ensure a greater, safer, and more meaningful youth participation in political life. Not because they deserve it, but because it is their right. I wish you a fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Jayathma. I have learned a lot. My note already at the beginning of this session is quite full, setting the tone as always for a great discussion, especially here tonight at the Global Town Hall and the session exploring deeper on Gen Z and Gen Y's agenda for a better world. So, who will we be joined by in today's discussion? I'll share a brief introduction of our speakers before going straight into the very first question, because I'm sure just like myself, all of you cannot wait to hear from our speakers. So here you see on the screen the 4 speakers. Hi, everyone. All right, so we are joined tonight by the Honorable Tina Jutten, who is the youngest member of parliament at the Mauritius National Assembly. We will also be joined by Tracy Owusu-Addo, founder and executive lead of Brave Foundation, Malual Bolkir, co-founder of African Youth Action Network, and Izana Saleh, co-founder and global president of Project Girls for Girls. It's a very diverse and very global panel that we've got going on, but because I wanted to ride the wave of Jayathma, her speech really touched on the political involvement. I thought, the Honorable Tina Jutten, if I can ask you the first question, as you are the youngest member of the parliament in Mauritius, I wanted to get your perspective, and can you share a little bit more the involvement of young people in politics, how you've gotten involved and interested in it, and why it's important?
Hello everyone. Such a pleasure being part of this town hall discussion. And indeed, the message was very impactful from what we just heard from the UN envoy on youth. And especially the last line, as she said, it is their right. And so I'd like to say that, you know, there are different ways to make the youths be part of the discussions at the high level table. So being one of the youths myself, I have to admit that when I was, for instance, at the university, I wasn't really interested in politics, because for me it was doing things which meant a lot to me, causes that mattered, and that went on. So even when I started working as a lecturer and as a young activist, I was always looking for causes which mattered to me, be it climate change, be it empowerment of other youth, be it working on mental health awareness in the country. So this is where I slowly started getting, you know, into the line of thinking, always being on this side of the table where you're always advocating for change, advocating for things, you know, claiming for better legislation, better legislative framework, even working on the national gender policy in the country. So I was sending a lot of notes, a lot of papers and concept papers to the ministries, until I eventually started thinking how to make a better difference. Because for me personally, if I have to share my story and how I got into politics and how I want to make other youths as well get in, I think it is about how to create a meaningful cause for participation, so youths can join in a lot of different phases. Like one is through direct participation and one is in indirect or informal participation. But the most important thing is to have something, a cause which connects to them. Like most of our youths, if we're talking about Generation Z right now, they're really concerned about, first of all, climate change, about what is happening to our climate and how we deal with it, and so many other, of course, societal issues. But they do not remain passive about it. So this is something which matters to them, and they are out, as the UN envoy said it, they're out there on the streets making protests, asking for actions to be taken, asking for urgent remedial actions. So we want to see the change. So I think this is the way, just like for me, this was the stepping stone, which made me jump from being mostly on the social side of things to today being part of a decision-making process and being part of a legislative body, because at the assembly, so we discuss what are the legislations which are important that we need to bring on board, that we need to take to the cabinet, to the National Assembly of Mauritius to discuss. And I have to say that there are so many, like one of the causes which mattered so much to me. I know I may be short on time. I just want to say that quickly. Like speaking about mental health was still a taboo in Mauritius. Like when I was a lecturer at the university, I lost one of my students, and then that made me start thinking about the whole thing. So that's why I started the whole movement with our youths at the university, with the NGO, and everyone talking about destigmatizing, speaking about mental health. Like for youths here, if someone is suffering from depression, someone has emotion issues, he or she should be able to voice it out. And how to make the youth feel secured in being themselves is what we needed to work on. So I started doing a lot of these works, a lot of these papers, and today I can tell you this is something which is like very, very close to my heart. So today in Mauritius, we have a mental health awareness bill, and we are slowly but surely progressing towards, towards that, or as we say, encadrement, that support system where anyone, not just the youths, anyone would feel that it is okay to speak about emotions. It is okay to feel upset. It is okay to be depressed. It is okay to be in confinement and feel isolated. Like we are all humans. And well, I know I may be short on time, so maybe I'll just stop here and let the moderator continue and later jump in on other ideas. But such a pleasure to hear from all of you and to be part of this forum, being myself a young member of parliament and being also a youth like you. Thank you.
Thank you. And honestly, personally speaking, it's a huge, you are a huge role model for young people like me who can see it's possible to enter politics. It doesn't have to be a far away, distant goal, but actually there are many people who are already embodying it, of which you are one, and very grateful to have heard and listened to your story. I thought it was very interesting how you pulled it back as well and talked about connection, right? We have to find something, especially as young people, that catches our attention, that makes us passionate. But it's not always easy to get there. So one of the ways that we reach young people is through mentorship. And I think that this was the link that I saw between yourself, Tina, Jutta, and Tracy. Both of you love to engage in mentorship of young people. So my next question is for you, Tracy, because I found that being the common link between the two of you. Can you share a little bit more? What are, in your experience, the best practices to reach young people and to inspire them best?
Thank you, Melati. It's really an honor to be here and the opportunity to also share my views regarding youth empowerment here. So for me, I think coming from a place of experience, when I was growing up in Ghana, I just felt there were not enough role models or we didn't have enough people who came to us during school hours that spoke to us even about the different career opportunities that are out there. Fortunately for me, I realized that I was able to travel outside of Ghana and to continue my primary education in Germany. And that experience really opened up a whole new world for me. It made me realize there are opportunities, but if you are not able to see them, if you're not able to someone to bring them to you to the forefront, that's where the problem is. And that's what that was something that when I decided to come back to my home country in Ghana, that was one of the things that I wanted to use my platform to be able to project, right? If you look at the statistics that we currently have, today, there are currently 60% of Africa's population is under 25. By 2030, that's in 8 years, the African youth is going to constitute 42% of the global youth population, excuse me. So there's a whole lot to be done. And if we are not at the forefront, trying to project through education, through practical skills education, through entrepreneurship, through health, speaking to them about the information that is out there, opportunities that are out there, then I think we will not be doing a good job. And that's what my foundation does. My foundation, Project Brave Foundation, we specifically focus on young women between the ages of 16 to 30 years old. And we empower them through, as I mentioned, education, entrepreneurship, and health, because those are the things that I believe as a woman, women generally, our issues are quite complex, right? You cannot touch on one part and not also deal with the other, because everything comes together in those areas. And for me, I realized those 3 areas are the most important parts for me. And that's what I do with my foundation. Going out there to the universities, working with the universities out there, I realized that there are young women out there who are talented, but it's just someone saying, hey, there's this opportunity, there's this work experience that you can try out. If you're trying, especially if you're on the path of self-discovery, as you mentioned, you don't even know, I mean, how do I even get there? What do I do? Where do I even start from? And for someone to be able to share their experience with you and say, this is what I did, this is what I'm doing, and this is how I got to where I am, I think that makes a whole difference, you know? And it's just that one, it sometimes takes just that one spark, just that one conversation. And for me, those little things in empowerment and mentorship are the most important things that I focus on. Health, again, as I said, population is on the rise. How do we give young women the power to have their own agency, right? To be able to say and decide when I want to have children and how many children do I want to have. It's a conversation that is ongoing here in Africa. And for us to be able to say that we're gonna give opportunities to the African youth out there, we need to be able to have those difficult conversations, right? If at that point, let's say we are 42% of the global population within 8 years, what kind of employment opportunities are we providing them? Here, we're looking at doing entrepreneurship. What are the career areas that people can get into? As Honorable Tina mentioned, there's climate action, there's environmental sustainability, there's emerging tech. Those are the careers and categories that people now, it's at the forefront where we are building capacity at. And for me, that's where really my focus areas are, being able to empower young women and say, hey, you can do this. As we are all going, we are all trying to find our way, right? We might all seem like we have it together, but we learn along the way, right? And that's for me the most important message that I try to give to young women that I meet and speak to on a regular basis. Yeah.
Definitely, we are all learning, and I always say, even when we throw off the graduation cap, that's where the lifelong learning begins. And it was incredibly powerful to hear as well your reflections on, never underestimating a good conversation or extending a helping hand. We all have a role to play. And when we talk about the empowerment of young people, we have to look at how we can invite those young people into different opportunities so that they can find those passions. Also, shifting focus slightly, because what stood out to me, Tracy, in the facts that you were sharing was really the fact that the African youth population is growing so rapidly. And so we cannot talk about the priorities of Gen Z without understanding the priorities of the African youth population. And so that's where I'd like to call our next speaker, Malual, and really kind of focus on what is happening in the next couple of days already. COP27 is happening in Egypt. And there's a lot of African youth who are on the grounds and involved. But I would like to hear from you on what your perspective is on the priorities of the youth in Africa. What are some of the things that are front and center for the African youth?
Thank you so much, moderator. I'm really thrilled to be part of this conversation. And it's very interesting that we are having the COP27 in Egypt these coming days. So if you look at some of the priorities for the African youth, it's very simple. Two of the major crises, two of major issues that we have in the world today is a violent conflict and the climate crisis. Simple. Those are the two major issues. If we have to solve them, then we can get rid of a lot of other issues that we have in the world today. Violent conflict and climate issues. So coming back to your question, which is about COP27 in Egypt, which obviously started or maybe is starting on Monday. Some of the focus and priorities for the African youth is that the question that a lot of the African youth has been asking is, how is that policy and adaptation benefits them at the national level? How can that adaptation happen at the national level? Because we have seen a lot of discussion around climate issues. For example, last year we had in Glasgow, we had it in so many places. How is it all about talks, or is there any implementation going on? And if there is implementation going on, how is that implementation adapted to the national policy of that very particular country? Because the conflict and the climate crisis in each country is different. Now, for example, in the continent of Africa, we have countries where there's drought, and then we have countries where there's so much flooding. So then you cannot bump them together with one solution. So how do you make sure that we contextualize the issues and at different national levels? So African youth, for example, are so much concerns about the policy and adaptation, especially at the national level. So personally, as someone who has been a two-time refugee, I was a two-time, I'm from South Sudan. So in South Sudan, we have both of two major crises. We have the highest humanitarian crisis, which is the violent conflict in Africa. And also we have issues to do with climate. We have a lot of people displaced by climate issues. So for example, in my own state, we have 230 people right now in one of just a small village that are suffering from a snake bite, and there's no anti-venom for it. So if you look at it, so the snakes are also running away from the climate, just like the people do. Every animal is running together. So it's very interesting how all these biodiversity converge in one place, but at the same time, it affects the entire humans that we have and the entire diversity that we do have. So the priority that we do have for the youth in Africa is that there's so much concern about how would that international climate policy benefit them at both regional and national level, and how would they be able to contribute into that? Because most of the time it's just about the discussion that happened, but it is not more about involving the views. So in my own opinion, if there's anything to be done about climate or anything, let us include the views of the people from both regional and national level to be able to contextualize their own context and put it into the framework of what the interventions of all of us as a regional community, as a global citizen, as an international community to do and to have in what we need to do in combating the climate issues.
Yeah, you mentioned two really interesting things here, and that's the thin line between the global aspect versus the local aspect. But there's another element, and I wanted to ask a follow-up question, if that's okay, because
yes,
I struggle with this as well as a young change maker, you know, as a full-time 21-year-old full-time change maker who's been on the front lines for the last 10 years, nearly half of my life attending conferences, meeting with communities. The frustration you mentioned is that there's talk and there's implementation. So where do you see the leadership happening or taking place in order to actually have that implementation taking place? Where do you see that being most led by?
Well, when I look at it, the talks and the conversations, the leaders or the global leadership right now is mostly on the verge of talks. And the young people wanted implementations. They are tired of the talks because the talks have been there even for more than 10 years that you have been involved. The talks have always been there, but the implementation has always been less. So now it is about the talks and conversation. So the issue is, how can as Generation Z and Generation Y convince the global community and global leadership to move away to make a transition from just talking to implementation? And by implementation is also providing funding, because now it's also about how do you give leadership and funding to those youth-led organizations in different countries around the world in what they do, because you cannot encourage youth to do leadership when they don't have the financial capacity to do certain things. So it's about how is the international donor system be flexible to even youth organizations, because youth organization could be a group, could be a student association in university. There's no need to have so many papers and so many work for such youth organization. How do international donor system have the flexibility to have, because the youth can create a bigger impact with less resources. But now there is a rigidity in the donor system toward the organization of the young people. So now the young people are pushing toward implementation, but the global international leadership is about just talking. So the thin line is, let there be a transition between just talking and implementation, and to have both ways, let there be intergenerational conversation. So it's not about one generation bringing change. We know, of course, we know, of course, Y and Z generation are the most influential that we do have right now. They are diverse, they are educated, and they are bring the world more close than ever before. Now the world is more closer than ever before. But of course, we need to have the X generation and the boomer generation, whatever generation that we do have. How do we make sure that there is intergenerational conversation to make sure that we align all our mindsets into one direction, and that is to bring a better world and a better universe for all of us?
Definitely, and very well said. We will not be able to achieve change if we work in silos and separately. So the intergenerational aspect is, you couldn't have said it better. Thank you for that. Izana, I want to move to you. As the co-founder of Project Girls for Girls, there's a shift I want to have specifically towards young women and girls. Speaking from my own experience, a lot of the friends that I have in the movement, but also the people that I work with and different organizations, very often now we're seeing a huge momentum in women leadership. But how do we create that at scale? How can we all play a role in creating more spaces, authentic and real, for women empowerment?
Thank you so much, Melati, for that introduction and very good question. Just a quick thank you also to FPCI and Global Town Hall for having me on behalf of Girls for Girls. Excellent question. You know, I could tie that into your earlier point with also the Honorable Tina. You spoke briefly about mentorship, and that is essentially what we do. So let me share with you just a little bit about what Girls for Girls is about and how we came to being today. In the year 2017, a group of girlfriends and I, we were classmates at Harvard Kennedy School, sat down for a cup of coffee, and we had this conversation. Hey, so why don't you share with us, what are some of the issues that the women have in your country? And there's a group of us, about, I think, 7 to 9 of us, and we represented different parts of the world nicely for that conversation. And consistently, regardless where we're from, I'm from Malaysia, other girlfriends there from Mexico, Iceland, Uzbekistan, Uganda, Oman, you name it, we're all there representing. And it all boiled down to poor representation when it comes to leadership across the board. In Malaysia, poor representation in politics. In Iceland, poor representation in the business world, so on and so forth. You get the drift. And we thought about it. We said, what can we do besides what the government is already doing? But what can we do? As you said, we were all change makers in our own right and also in the way we think. So we said, what can we do? And that's how Girls for Girls came about. We did our research. We spoke to professors who are now our advisors, and we understood that some of the reasons why women and girls don't step into leadership, don't ask for that promotion, don't ask for that 30% salary increase when they shift jobs, is because number one, they feel like they lack, it's a perceived sense of lack of confidence. Secondly, they feel that they don't have the technical skills. How do I negotiate, whether it's my salary or whether it's a trade agreement? I see Tracy nodding there. We resonate with this. We've been through it when we started out, right? And also the third thing is young women don't have the support system, whether it is family members, because in some parts of the world, it's still very, very patriarchal. Here in Malaysia, still very patriarchal. And also in other parts of the world. So whether it's family, whether it's partners, maybe sometimes friends, there are some environments, not all, where women are not entirely supportive of each other. So we set up this program. It's a mentorship initiative, and now thankfully a global one, to encourage and help young women with the courage, vision, and skills to pursue their leadership. We provide the support system. We've got a great group of women who are always saying positive things to ensure you meet your full potential. We are providing materials that we have summarized from Harvard Kennedy School in specific areas which we think will help young girls. And also, most importantly, we're providing mentors who feel for your growth and are really invested in seeing you get there. So your question was, how can we create those spaces of authenticity and ensuring real women empowerment, real growth and impact? So I'm happy to say, in my honest and humble experience, the shared leadership that we have at Girls for Girls, so it's really not just my effort, but there's so many of us here who are putting in our resources, whether it's our network, whether it's our funds, whether it is, our thoughts. We get this going. And there are two parts, I would say, that can answer your question. Firstly, is to create that environment that would help build this authentic space for real women empowerment. Number one, embrace young women's courage, sense of courage, and also their opinions. And this is done through active listening. So often in real spaces of work and, whether you're in the UN, like our keynote speaker earlier, whether you're in the office, active listening does not happen. So validation doesn't take place. And that's what we practice at G4G. Number two, we enhance the differences that we have with each other, whether it's our background, whether it is, economic status, whether it's education, whatever it is, we enhance that and we embrace it. And number three, we ensure that there is an approachable leadership style. And one of my co-founders, Alan Asimwe, she did this excellent TED talk called Shared Leadership. Look out for it, it's amazing. And the technical part, I mentioned two buckets earlier, the technical part. Number one, creating a mentorship network, which is what we have done, and I'm sure many do. Number two, normalizing and exemplifying sponsorship. This means that walking your talk, taking one of your mentees and ensuring she gets into a leadership position within your space. And number three, share readily available tools and frameworks with other women. So in G4G is a total volunteer space. If we feel that you meet that criteria, you come in on board and we share materials with you. Let's, spread the good word around the world. I see my time is up. Back to you then, Melati.
Thank you so much, Izana. And wow, I have to show you my notebooks here, this big page. I am learning so much from all of you. And that's
go to our website.
Exactly. No, it's also a good reminder that, we're here tonight on a Saturday as Gen Z, which is quite special, to learn from each other because there is value in conversation. But the next step is
tomorrow.
Yes.
Or this morning. We are not only here tonight. I just woke up, so we are here both.
Exactly. In all time zones. Actually, in my brief sheet, I think I had 11 different time zones noted. So it's a very global event, and we're here to learn from each other, which is actually, I think, something that's so unique to our generation as well. we're ready, we're willing to learn. And as a sort of, I think, lightning round to make sure that our listeners are also sharp and ready to keep learning and keep writing their notes, I wanted to ask all of you the same question. And if you can just, reflect on your answers, but also wary of the time, because the next round is where we'll hear a reflection of interventions and questions from discussants. So that's a different format. But before we wrap up round one, out of curiosity, having been involved in the field for a while now, all of you in separate different fields, what is one thing you wish you knew earlier? Who wants to start?
Oh, I can?
Go for it.
Okay, I'd just like to quickly jump on what Izana said earlier, and which has a strong relationship to what is the thing I wished I knew earlier. First of all, congratulations for this amazing work for Girls to Girls. I think being young girls, we are majority of girls here, of course, and it's good to have a good, strong male here. But I wanted to say this. She touched on something very important, which is about the confidence and the courage, which in so many cultures, like even in the Asian culture we come from, like in Mauritius, so it's like we, maybe they are the embedded stereotypes we have been fighting against, but which are there, part of the system, part of the roots, part of the way we grew up. So it's like, as women and as girls, you have dreams. And not everyone comes and tells you, you can dare to dream and you can dare to make your dream a reality. So that's the thing, to have the courage in yourself, to have the self-confidence, to believe in yourself. And also, she also mentioned about the support system and, creating that safe space for active listening and talking and validation. But very often, be it in the workspace, be it in the political space, be it anywhere you are, you don't get this validation. And maybe it's where you have to kind of source that strength from inside of yourself. And very often it is in those, I would say, those darkest moments that you really realize your strength. But I would like to say, like, I would like to share something also. Earlier you were saying it, that going to and ask and negotiate for that, for instance, that salary rise, that promotion, or when you see things are being unfair. I'd also like to say something here, which I never said earlier before publicly, but I'd like to share it. I wished I knew that before, and that self-belief, and when you go to the table to negotiate, that the people across the boardroom, I'm not saying that all the people are like that, but across the boardroom where there is a majority of men and majority of male dominated, that when they look at you as a young woman, as a young girl coming to the table, they are not just seeing you as a pretty face, as as a young girl coming here. And that's what they can think of, but they can't even be receptive to what you're putting on the table. I had this issue so many times. I had personal difficulties to be able to claim and command that respect and authority, which my male colleagues, when we just come to the table and we just say something, because the people around the table will be just looking at you as a pretty face, and they will not even be thinking about the idea you're putting forward. So it took me a long time to be able to work on this and to make my voice be heard and to make them know and feel that, sorry, women are not just like here as pretty faces or just like, sorry, objects or whatever, but they are with ideas and to work and to make things happen. And those who get it, they get it. And those who don't now, this is where all of us women together have to be, as you said, Izana, have to be supportive of each other. And please sign me in and allow me to join in your Girls for Girls movement.
Wonderful. I'll get your contact from the organizers.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love to see these collaborations happening. Izana, Malual, and Tracy, I'm going to pass it to you to share one thing, and just going to keep it short, to keep one thing that you wish you knew earlier. Izana, why don't we start off with you?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. I wish I knew that my thoughts and my opinions were valid, even as a young woman.
Okay, Malual?
Okay. My wish, I had wished that I would not have, I wish that I would have not been looked at as just a statistics. I have been a refugee, and all of us, when you look at refugee, you just look at the numbers. You don't look at them as human beings with potentials to create a difference. So I wish that people don't look at me as a statistic, but as a human being with the potential to create difference in my own community. And at the same time, I also wish that we could have the same voice, because we have differences in different backgrounds. And if you look at it, I'd wish that I have never had the inferiority complex. I used to think that I'm too young to create a difference and I'm too small to bring a change. But at the same time, like we have heard, if you think that you are too young to bring to bring a change, just go to a swammy areas and be in a place where there are so many mosquitoes, and you think if those mosquitoes will be too small to change that night for you.
Maluel,
So,
I'm going to have to cut you off really short, because I am getting a brief from the team behind the scenes that we do have to keep it moving. But Tracy, I just want to let you wrap up one thing that you wish you learned.
I wish I knew ahead of time that my network, my social network, is my social currency. Really, getting to know the right people, speaking with the right people. I wish I knew that ahead of time, and I would have started building that network much, much earlier.
Well, we are here today with the right people. So Tracy, I want to move on to the second round with that wish I knew earlier. And I'll introduce the first discussant, who is Martijn Lampert. It's a Dutch name, so I'm half Dutch, so I recognized it straight away, from Glocalities. I'll invite you now to share your perspectives of what we have just spoken about.
Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to hear you speak my name correctly. I was surprised by that. Thank you. So I'm conducting global research into drivers and values of people that people hold dearly, their aspirations, their dreams in life. And this is where I have a message based on the voices of tens of thousands young people that we have interviewed in the last decade. And you are powerful beyond measure. And it's very important to realize that. Because nowadays, a lot of youth are struggling. We see that in the research, earlier research that we produced together with Professor Ronald Inglehart on the COVID trends. And we see that young people increasingly are stepping up. And also for the environment. And the steepest rise in environmental concern is visible amongst the young generation. So I think the young generation has the potential to lead the path to a better future, but needs to step into it, needs to step into its power. And what is this power? First, you are the highest educated generation ever in human history. Realize that, be that. This is confirmed by a higher trust in education and science amongst the young generation. That is so important to understand, because many people from the older generations are in the way of genuine change. But you have the vitality and the knowledge to make change happen. So what is important now is to connect with the passions and the lifestyles and the aspirations of Gen Z globally. And how do you do that? By using the right narratives that speak to their hearts. And this is not a narrative of top-down rulers, alpha males telling you what to do. No. This is a totally different narrative, which has to do with being the creator, being the visionary, having the imagination of how the future should and must be different. That is a narrative of storytelling that fits with the young generation. Also the narrative of the hero. And I just heard one of the speakers say, you meet your true strength at the lowest point, where you are really rock bottom. And the hero knows that, because that fuels new energies, transformation. Dare to be that. The other narrative that fits with young people, and this is how you can mobilize a whole generation of new change makers, you can take the lead in this, is the narrative of the sage, which is about wisdom, intelligence, being able to step into the shoes of others and then tell your story. Because one thing is for sure, autocratic dictators that are now holding a lot of young people back from flourishing only think about what's happening in Iran, only think about people who are young people who are having to flee Russia. They don't have the future and they are alone. And your generation is the best connected generation ever in human history. Tap into those inner drivers. On the surface, you see a lot of turmoil, you see polarization, you see crisis, this and that. But below the surface, new trends are emerging. We will publish these trends next week in cooperation with Global Citizen, based on interviewing 300,000 people in a time span of 8 years from 20 countries. And those trends are concentrated around your generation and the power of your generation. And I'm very, very excited about this. I'd love to continue this conversation also when the report is out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martijn. I'm personally looking very much forward to the release of this report, and we will keep our eyes peeled. It's very true in terms of narrative, but also the sense of community and tapping into that power. We're going to go straight next into our next discussant, Cho Seo-young from Seoul Global Networks, the Republic of Korea. So if I can invite you to give and share your remarks.
Yes, thank you so much, Melati. First of all, thank you so much for having me, and I'm pleasure to be part of it in behalf of Seoul. If you look at the topic of this session, various divisions and crises have come not only in Korea, but also around the world, including the COVID-19 pandemic. In response, Generation Y and Z have been pushing for social change to solve these global affairs. They are brave enough to fight crisis, and they are the first to respond to social issues. Their courageous attitudes alert business and governments that do not act on it, helping to build a better future. As such, the keywords of the agendas presented by Generation Y and Z could be equality, sustainability, accountability, and solidarity. Among this, the recent agenda of Gen Y and Z that I want to suggest is gender equality and value-based consumption. These generations are against traditional ideas and attitudes about gender roles. They aim for a gender equality society that guarantees equal rights, equal responsibilities, and its opportunities, away from the conservative culture that has been passed down. To fight gender conflicts in the family and workplace and overcome the ingrained gender discriminatory values, they call for the action. For instance, youth organizations in Korea are conducting protests and campaigns to strengthen the system for promoting gender equality. And they ultimately want to break down gender stereotypes through women's empowerment and realize an equal society for both women and men. Furthermore, abnormal weather phenomena such as fatal floods, heat waves, and heavy rains have continued these days. Thus, youth practice value-based consumption and focus on social values to use eco-friendly products and pursue sustainability. They use clothes or eco bags using plastic-free products or recycled materials, and they use vegan cosmetics. They declare and act honestly about their social values and care about responsibility for the environment. Thanks to their emergence and subjects of culture and consumption, the direction of companies and brands has also changed. So these generations are familiar with digital media and are the first to respond to the trends of the times and unite with each other. Based on these features, NGOs should help generations Y and Z gain insights by forming intellectual networks with overseas branches to discuss each situation. Since they come up with creative ideas that are different from the previous generation, their positive attitude is valuable these days in Korea and around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's so insightful. We really recognize that this is truly a global town hall. From the Netherlands to Korea, we are starting to understand the focuses of young people. And not only did we discuss the intergenerational aspects and its importance, but we just heard about the interconnectedness and the interest of young people, whether it be gender equality all the way through what's in the products that we are buying. So thank you so much for those reflections. And the third and final discussant is taking us all the way to the Argentine Republic, Patricia Mangarda from UNTREF.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity. And it's a pleasure for me to represent 3 de Febrero University from Argentina. I'll be asking 2 questions for all of our speakers, so thanks for sharing your opinions. As you probably know, Generation Z was impacted, first of all, by the pandemic, after that, by the economic crisis, and finally, by the frustration caused by crisis, which I mentioned before. Personally speaking, this generation has to deal with the pandemic impact and due to the economic situation. In many cases, they are forced to postpone the university studies and looking for a job, especially in countries impacted by the economic crisis. My first question is, what could be done to avoid this new generation leaving or postponing their professional career? Secondly, Generation Z suffer from anxiety owing to their high economic expectation. I personally consider that Generation Z is bombarded with the idea that a lot of money can be made from social media, but by streaming or being influencer. The question is there a connection between this high economic expectation and what can be seen in social media? Thank you.
Wow, those are some really incredible questions. And I'm gonna now also wrap up section or second round. Thank you for the 3 discussants who contributed their perspectives and insights. And we're now bringing it back to our speakers for their reflections. And perhaps we could kick off with answering Patricia's 2 questions for us. And I really leave it up in the hands of who feels comfortable to answer one of the 2 questions. Does anyone want to jump in?
The question again?
Can you repeat the question?
So I think the questions from me, one was about the postponing of the professional career. How can we avoid that? And the second one was the connection. And Patricia, feel free to jump in. I can see if you're on mute right now, but for my notes.
Yes, if you prefer, I can repeat the 2 questions. The first question is, what could be done to avoid this new generation leaving or postponing their professional career? And the second one is there a connection between this high economic expectation and what can be seen in social media?
Thank you so much, Patricia. Does anyone feel like they can speak to it? Tracy, I see you unmuting straight away. Feel free to jump in.
I think I'll go for both questions, but I'll start with the second one, where she mentioned the high expectations of how the youth can make money off social media. I think you have to look at it from different perspectives. For the African youth, this is an opportunity actually for them to make money off social media. There are not many opportunities out here when it comes to employment. We have a high unemployment rate here currently. So I'm sure in Europe or in the West, that is something that is very persistent. Obviously, when you go to YouTube, you see all these YouTube gurus selling different courses that people can join and all of those things. We have to see it as an opportunity in the sense that, fine, the internet has become an oyster where people can learn and they can make something of themselves without necessarily having to go through the whole linear education system. But it's also become a cesspit for others to defraud people, right? So I think as a youth or someone who is looking to go out there on the internet to make a career out of it, you just have to really choose your path and be strategic about it, right? Because at the end of the day, if you want to make money off social media, it's about the brand that you have built out there. It's about being able to call to the right people to see your work and actually pay you for the experience you are bringing on, right? So that's what I'll say to social media. When it comes to the question of I think postponing their career, speaking from a female perspective, I remember when I was working, I started my career out as a media strategist in Germany, in Berlin to be precise. And I got 2 years into my work, I got pregnant, right? And then you have to go on maternity leave and then want to come back again. Unfortunately, there are cases where with pregnancy, you don't have any other choice but to put a stop to your career and then come back again. And with something like this, it's always a bit difficult actually to be able to step into the same shoes or into the same room when you come back, because obviously things have moved on, new people have joined, and you have to find your foot again in the company. And that's one thing I remember I struggled with when I was coming back into my career. But then I realized, okay, well, maybe this whole 9-to-5 thing is not something that would work for me. Maybe this is really the opportunity for me to venture out into entrepreneurship and be able to manage my own time. And that's what I did, right? So postponement of careers is it can be something that is an opportunity, but it can also be something that obviously, if you don't manage it right, could cause your career to have a setback. But with women, I believe usually you don't have a choice.
Yeah, and I do think, just to jump on that, talking about Gen Z as well and the resilience in the workspace, everything seems to be an opportunity. And so that's where we as, industries or businesses in the space of hiring and welcoming Gen Z into the workforce need to be as adaptive as Gen Z. There's a comment here that I would like to mention, because I think perhaps Izana and Tina, you might be interested in hearing one of the mentions in the comment from a Kenyan MP joining the Global Town Hall chat box, Ahan David Ochola. Women's roles as decision makers in all levels of society, increasing political involvement as members of the electorate and as elected officials, achieving gender parity in the workplace, both in the number and quality of positions afforded to women, but also equal pay for equal work, increasing women's leadership in all sectors. Then we make our world great. Sorry, my cat just jumped on.
I want to chip in on the questions of our friend from Argentina.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you so much. The first question that you were asked is about postponement of professional career. So I would personally discourage that, because the reason first of all why we go for professional career is because we want something out of it. So there's no reason that we would be leaving it out just because of certain things that we don't believe in. So then it comes back to the passion of an individual. So what you really want as an individual, if you want to pursue that career, then you can pursue it, there's no problem. If you want to deviate into something else, then again, that is up to you. And then your second question about the connectivity, but for me, I personally believe that professional career is very important, especially if you choose it as something that is important to you as an individual. So it comes back to you as an individual. Number two is about connectivity of individual and the expectations of everybody else about the social media and all of that. So social media is a very interesting platform. It can either guide you, or it can either lead you to, or it can mislead you. So it's two ways. And for me, I believe that it all comes to individual passion about what they want to pursue about the social media, how they want to pursue it. It's not just about when you see when I see my friend, the moderator, or my friend, the MP, then I want to be like them automatically. No, I have to be myself. I have to be authentic self. I have to be me, and I have to pursue social media in a way. And number two, it's not just about, it should not be about getting money, and that's wrong. And if any generation goes to social media to get to get money or anything like that, that will be influencer to get money, that is a wrong way of pursuing social media. I think the right way to pursue social media is about pursuing your own passion. How do you want to influence the people? What are you passionate about? What do you like? And how do you want to present your authentic self? If money comes, because if you don't have the vision, and then if the money are the driving force, then you will go in a wrong way. But then if your passion is driving you, then the money will just follow, because now you have the passion ahead of you, then the money will follow. But if the money are ahead of you, then you can get into a wrong way.
Yes, Malua, I think you mentioned really the point of doing the right thing for the right reason. And I think to stay on track of time, we are now moving on to the third round, which is inviting a next set of interventions and questions from discussants. We have here the countries China and Vietnam both represented. So I'd like to invite Yu Su from Sino Carbon Innovation and Investments Co. Ltd. Please come and unmute to share your reflections.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melati. Today, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the panelists today. And it's a great time to share my perspective as a youth from China today. So actually, first, I would like to echo the point of Malua. You mentioned two very interesting words that starting with the letter C, which is the climate and also the conflict. And I would like to add another word, which is COVID. That can set the tone of the era that we are living in today. So I think without COVID, I think every one of us can meet each other in person. So actually, when I look at the calendar 4 years ago, also in November, I was in Bali, in Indonesia, and attending the event organized by the Asian Universities Alliance. So that event was organized by the University of Indonesia. So today my sharing I would like to share 3 pictures with all of you. Hope you can see from my camera here. So the first picture is that we took in our event when everyone was dressed up in our own local costumes. And you can see as a Chinese, I'm dressed in Hanfu, and for Indonesia, our students were dressed in batik, and for our Japanese friend, we were dressed in kimono. So everyone is representing their own culture, and of all of us will try to enjoy the culture behind these costumes. And we discuss about the history, the culture, and also to enjoy the charisma of these costumes that can represent. And the second picture I would like to share is actually, I'm not sure, Melati, whether you still clearly remember that actually I joined one of the workshop organized by you, which is the Bye Bye Plastic Bags. And that is the picture that we made during the sessions of how to raise our awareness to reduce the usage of plastics. And we are using these clothes to make some very valuable and very eco-friendly products. And the third picture I would like to share is we were collecting the rubbish on one of the famous beach in Bali Island. And this picture was taken by one of the photographer which you can see that actually there is a very good representation of the gender of the male students and also the female students, which can also echo some of the points made up by our speakers before. So why I would like to share these three pictures. First, I think it's a coincidence that we are today also having the events remotely from Indonesia, but also at the same time, we can read from these pictures is that every one of us are representing different culture, and we were dressing in different costumes. We having different background and history. But what we are trying to do as a whole is that we are trying to tackle with some common goals. Now in this era is the climate change. And at that time, we were trying to raise people's awareness to protect our environment. So with that being said, I strongly suggest that after today's event, the organizer of this event could share the contact information with all of us. Because I really cherish the time when all of us representing different cultures, standing from different perspectives, but we were trying to achieve the common goals as all the human beings and all the youth are really caring about. That would be my reflection, and thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'm so happy to hear that we actually connected here on Bali and that you were able to join one of the workshops that my organization, Bye Bye Plastic Bags, pulled together. Thank you so much for that. I think representation is a thing that Gen Z especially expect, millennials as well, the diversity and representation. If we do not see our role models, we cannot become our role models, right? So thank you for bringing that point together. Now, for our next speaker, I apologize in advance if I do not pronounce your name correctly. Nguyen Hung Cha, please come on, and from the ASEAN Youth Organization and from Vietnam.
Oh, okay. So hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
So I'm Hung Cha from Vietnam, and I'm here to represent the ASEAN Youth Organization. Firstly, I want to say thank you to the speakers for wonderful speeches. And as a young person and a student of politics and IR majors, I find the details that you all provided are very informative, and I might use them in my future essay about foreign policy. And I also have much concern regarding several political events recently, and I'm curious to find the answers for these following questions, and I hope that professionals here can help me out. So firstly, in the case of the Rohingya crisis, Rohingya people are an ethnic group who do not belong to any country. They are state-led people, and they do not have a passport. They do not have an identity, and currently no country or organization intends to help resolving their problem. So in such a challenging crisis, when even world leaders find it difficult to take action, what can the youth possibly do to help the Rohingya people? And for my second question, I want to speak about the coup d'etat in Myanmar or the protests in Thailand where people demand for regime changes. Many young people and influencers have tried to raise this voice for the justice of Burmese and Thai. For example, the Miss Grand International 2021, Ngo Thúc Thủy Tiên, in her greeting speech, used the three finger symbols, a gesture of calling for peace with the meaning of supporting the people in Thailand and Myanmar. However, the situations in these two countries stay quite the same. So how can the youth increase their influence and make their actions more effective in order to cause actual changes? And yeah, that's the end of my question.
Thank you so much for those questions. In respect of time, I'm passing it straight to our speakers for their reflections, and we'll kick off with Izana to share your perspectives and answers.
Thank you so much, Melati. I understand we have a good 10 minutes for all of us. If I am lagging in my internet connection, please give me heads up and I'll switch off the video. So I wanted to touch a little bit on some of the earlier questions. I didn't manage to chime in. There was a question about postponing or delaying your career as a result of the crisis that we're going through in this world today. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight is a very big thing that is a silver lining, I would say. I would hate to say that as a result of a crisis, but if we had to look for one, the growth of digital economy, as well as digital agility being part of a lot of people's DNA now, post-pandemic era, is something that I hope that the youth can capitalize instead of pushing their career back a little bit. Because a shift in 1 or 2 years in your CV or years of experience can do quite a bit to damage your potential and income generating capabilities. We see this with women who have to go through career comeback programs after stepping out to give birth. And you know, when you step out or you skip out potential opportunities during this era, when there is now an alternative, which there are a lot of careers available online. I'll just give a bit of example. In Malaysia, we have this government agency called the Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation, of which I sit on the board, and we report to one of the ministries. So it's the programs conducted there are part of the government's initiative to ensure that Malaysians, with a special focus on young ones, are able to generate better income through this digital space. So that I hope is something that I can share. If we are in the government position, whether MP or government agency rep of some sort, this is a DNA that we need to inculcate. And if we are individuals, we must dive into this. This has to be part of our DNA. So that's my feedback. Thanks so much, Melati.
Thank you, Izana. Does anyone else want to jump in? Yes.
Yeah, can I just jump onto what Izana said? I also wanted to say something which is really important. You know, our leadership or our influence on the world, or even on the people around us, on our environment, does not stem only from our position or our post or what we do. It actually stems from the way we are able to influence things. So we can be influencers, we can be leaders, because I truly believe that leadership doesn't have to be that you are a boss or you are in government or you are a CEO, because leadership is about influencing lives. So the moment you can influence lives, you can choose to influence lives positively or negatively. So you can choose to be a leader if you influence lives positively. And if you can use your own experiences to empower others and to transform those into lessons. I also quickly wanted to jump on the question which from our friend from Argentina about, you know, the use of social media to get income and how and being influencers. I have to say that, you know, I have read a lot of research papers indicating that on social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, most of the youngsters, there is a big study on that, that they are actually upset and depressed. And you know why? Because they keep comparing. Someone said it earlier, I think it was Manuel, who said that you have to be authentic. So that's it. So some people, we see others posting, for instance, pictures of a happy job, pictures of a happy event or successful events, and then we feel depressed because we compare their lives. And it is a quote, I can't remember from whom, that comparison is a master thief of joy. So we have to be able to recalibrate our youngsters as well, and any individual, to make them remember that they're unique, and their actually their authenticity and their uniqueness is actually their USP, and to keep up that uniqueness, you know. So I think that's very important, and you can be influencers only by being yourself and by sharing that, I believe, that inner light, because once you do that, it has a boomerang effect around you, because it also, people are also happy. And yes, I don't think there is anything wrong if you can earn income, as you said, Izana. If like even here, the government is coming up for you know, strategies to be able to help youngsters who want to become entrepreneurs or like digital experts who have that space, who can actually build something. So if it is something positive, then why not? But of course, this is where, you know, because the Gen Z has been the gen which has been living in with internet and with connections, and we have to know where our values are. And I know I don't want to be too long, but I think even Martin earlier said that. So it's about your connections. It's about how you make use of that connection to the world to create a better space, a safer space, something more positive, and not vice versa. So basically, while our generations are living in that interconnected space, very important in that virtual reality, not to lose the true sense of self and the true values which actually matter. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was wondering if Tracy, you had any inputs as well on the last couple of rounds of discussants?
Okay.
I'll just say to the youth that is who are out there who are listening to us, let's just be solutions oriented. Really, that's the only way we can solve the problems that we see immediately around us. And we cannot wait for someone to come in and say, hey, take money and do this and do that. No, in our certain way, we can all do something with the issues that we have. And I think that alone can go a long way to change and make the world that we really need to see.
I love that, Tracy. Maluel, you were going to jump in and say something as well?
Yes, first of all, before I have to say what I say, before you stop me actually, because I'm the only speaker that you've ever stopped twice now in the conversation. That's one. Number two is that when we talk about all these conversations and about equality, like all of you are talking about, it has to be equality for all. It doesn't mean if there are no young male that, because most of the time young male are mostly now out of the picture, because the people that have been creating the marginalization is the all male conversations that we are having. But now you have been stopping me twice. There's no speaker that you have been stopped. And what I have to say in regards to the answer, what can you do to help the Myanmar? The question from the lady from Vietnam is that, first of all, what the youth globally can do is to understand the context of the conflicts in Myanmar, because of course we know that the youth are a global community and they are so much connected, but the youth cannot jump into something that they don't have much clue about. So I think creating more awareness about the situation there will help youth around the world to understand what the situation is about. And then they can chip in on how they can contribute, whether using their connectivity, because like one of the speakers from Netherlands said, that we are the generations that is more connected in human history than ever before, which is the truth. And yeah, so I think understanding the context, a lot of people don't know the difference between Myanmar and Burma. You know, for some of us watch it from the Rambo movies, we see Burma, we see Myanmar. Some people don't understand the difference of this. So I think creating awareness about what is the context of the situation will help the youth around the world to understand what the context is about, and then for them to contribute is when they have knowledge about the situation, and then they can chip in on how they can contribute, whether through opinion or through influencing the different offices that they can reach through. That's what I can say.
Thank you so much, Maluel. And yes, I know I'm sticking to a tight time frame, so I apologize for the cutoffs the last two times, but thank you for giving your valuable insights. We're now moving on to the fourth round, which is actually bringing a question from the audience that we have tuning in today. We have a question that has been chosen by Intan. So Intan, thank you so much for your question. And the question is, what do you think the youth can do to fix this divided world? Now, it's a big question with a lot of different ways that we can go. So I think tapping into the unique perspectives that we have from the four speakers today, I will let each and every one of you give your input and expertise, starting off with, who wants to take it?
Okay, let me take it.
Go for it.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, the world is not divided world. I think the world is more connected than ever before. And for us to be coming together is to continue to have, for us to make a world a more better place, is to continue to have more discussions, more dialogue, and more conversations that are sometimes not even inconvenience to us. Things are conversations that sometimes they don't make us comfortable. Because if we expect conversations that are comfortable for us, then we are losing the track here. So the most important thing is sometimes let us accept all the conversations, whether comfortable or uncomfortable. And then that is when we can see, oh, okay, accepting what is comfortable and what is uncomfortable for us will lead us to the right direction. So I think when I look at the world is more coming closer, more ever before. I think it used to be divided before, but I think for me now it's more divided. And the question, I would just say, let us keep the unity that we have in the global community. And the reason why there is more dividing world is because the context, the crisis in each country is different from each country. So in our global thoughts of making a world a better nation, how do we contextualize those crises to a regional and national level? How do we make sure that we understand each context differently, and then we provide solutions differently and recommendation differently, and then we bring them together as a global solutions, instead of us coming up with only one umbrella of saying this is the global solution. That's what I can say. Thank you.
Maluel, sticking to the core and beginning intro as well, the local perspective. Thank you for that. Izana, I saw you unmuted first, so you get to go next.
Thank you so much, Melati. I reckon what Intan might be referring to is some of the inequalities and inequities that we see. I'll keep my answer and thoughts tight. I think youth should walk the talk, because you today think differently, you function differently, your DNA, your capacity to ramp up information, the connectivity, someone spoke about connectivity earlier, is vastly different than anyone in the previous generation. And I would say definitely walk the talk that exemplifies the values you believe in. And if you need validation for what you think, please let this platform, our conversation today, be your support system to say, yes, go for it. Because what you think matter and what you do can change your space.
Thank you, Izana. The Honorable Tina, over to you to keep it short and sweet, just reflecting on time before passing it to Tracy.
Yes, very quickly. So I just like to reiterate what I said earlier in the other panel as well. It's like to believe in yourself, to believe in what it is you believe is right or should be done, and to take action for it. Also, to keep going, because whatever happens, you need to still continue believing that there is a reason, there is a purpose why you chose to do this. And so just keep on, never give up.
Thank you. Tracy, jump in.
Yeah. So I think this platform is the right step, bringing the North, the South, the East, and the West together, and us having these interesting conversations. I think it would be amazing to see a youth forum or dialogue that is happening yearly, that has representatives from all countries across the world, talking about the current issues that are going on and finding solutions to those problems. That would be something that I think would be a great way to bring this. I don't believe we're in a totally divided world. When it comes to political and cultural issues, yes. But when it comes to youth, I believe we are very much in a very global village, and we should just take it a step further.
Wow, Intan, I hope if you're still listening in that you got much more to an answer than you were expecting. I've learned a lot tonight from all and each and every one of you. Also from the discussants, thank you so much for giving your input and the questions that you fed into this conversation. As a young changemaker myself, was really this space tonight was a space of learning, but also reflection on what our priorities are and what we need to be doing better. From focusing on the talking to the implementation, the global lens to the local lens, but most importantly, the community aspect where we can all count on each other to thrive and come out of our anxiety and into action. So this is really, thank you to FPCI and to Global Citizen for putting together this incredible program and this session at the Global Town Hall, from youth to youth and understanding Gen Z and Gen Y's priorities for a better world. My name is Melati and I was your moderator tonight. And from Bali, Indonesia, good night.